This one session prevents 90% of the problems at the table. Episode 4 is all about getting session 0 underway. In this session, what we're going to cover is what session 0 is, what it isn't, and how to properly run it. Welcome to StoryForge DM, where I help you become the best DM possible. Session 0 is the session before the campaign or adventure or one-shot starts. It's where you prepare your characters, get to know your players, and have everything lined up. It's where you get to set expectations between the players and, of course, set your own expectations as the DM. It's where the party gets to decide who they're going to play and what role they're going to fill to make sure that each role that is necessary for a successful campaign is filled at the table. And if you're curious what I mean by role, primarily tank, healer, wizard or magic user, and rogue. Those 4 roles really do need to be covered in most campaigns. Now, especially in the latest versions of D&D, it's very easy to cover those roles without having to play the quintessential or vanilla classes, like your cleric, for instance, because a druid can also heal. Or like your wizard, for instance, because a warlock can also cast spells and be a magic user. But that being said, one isn't better than the other. All the classes are fun to play, I can assure you of this. One of the things you want to do in session 0 is make sure that the tone that you're putting forth for all the players matches the campaign you're setting up. There's nothing worse than running a Ravenloft campaign that's supposed to be dark and ominous and scary and having everybody laugh and bounce around like a bunch of clowns. It's really not that fun if the tone doesn't match the environment. If, on the other hand, it's supposed to be uplifting and having fun and joyous, if you want to call it that, then of course, make sure your PCs are doing just that. The other thing session 0 is for setting expectations. If you set expectations up front, it will be sure to mitigate conflict. Let your players know what you think of the rule set, what rules you're going to use, if you have any house rules that you're going to use in advance, or if you might have read something that you plan to use for this campaign that will set the PCs up and of course you up for success. There's a player's guide in most pre-written campaigns, and of course you can get your PCs to have a read over it before. This will make sure that everybody is on the same page. In session 0, there are a handful of topics that you're going to want to cover. Namely, tone and genre, player expectations, character concepts, boundaries and safety, and scheduling honesty. When I talk about tone and genre, what I mean is, back to the Ravenloft example. If, for instance, you're playing in a Cthulhu or horror-esque type of genre, you want to make sure that the players understand that as well. If, on the other hand, it's more of a Lord of the Rings adventure, world-saving sort of adventure, you want the PCs to know just that. And if you're just getting to the table to have fun, sort of a pop and chips or beer and popcorn kind of game, then let them know that as well. The whole point is that when everybody's on the same page, the ideals, the feeling, the genre can be met, not just by you, who's helping to facilitate the story, but also to the players at the table who are collaboratively building the story alongside you. Player expectations is huge. Make sure that if you want to mitigate a player from, min-maxing or the like, that is known. Let players know that this campaign is going to be mostly role-playing rather than dice throw, if you catch my drift. Or contrarily, maybe you want to let players know to max out their character to the best they can possibly be. Perhaps it's a really hard campaign and you want the PCs to have the best opportunity to put their best foot and strongest character's foot forward. Character concepts is huge, and this is massive for session 0, especially when you're planning the campaign. Everybody should get to play the character that they want, but also should fill the necessary role. In the case that there are, say, 2 people who want to be healers, which doesn't happen very often, maybe one plays a druid and one plays a cleric. Of course, this could leave a hole in the overall party lineup. Maybe you're missing a rogue or missing a face or missing a tank. However, there are ways that certain characters and classes can take those tank positions or fill in the rogue position or the magic user position. And as I always impress, NPCs can also be used to fill these positions. So if someone needs to identify something, maybe one of those NPCs that they know in town or are going to get to know in town is someone who can do the identifying and really help them out in the case that there's a lack of a magic user. Boundaries and safety is huge, and I don't think our community talks about it enough. When I say boundaries and safety, I'm really talking about the stuff that doesn't fly at the table. So it's good to ask your players what they are okay with and what they're not okay with. I've heard a lot of talk about things going sideways, maybe sexual content being brought forward, or maybe gruesome deaths or descriptions being brought forward that really sour the taste of the people at the table, or perhaps insult them outright. If these are things that your players will not stand for, you need to know up front. Because you need to be able to not only ensure that it doesn't come out from you, but also that it doesn't come out from the other players at the table. And it's a great idea to set forth that idea. Look, we're not going to talk about this, we're not going to dig into this subject, and we're not going to deal with that. Hard stop. If you put that forward, that will be sure to help make sure that everybody's on the same page. And of course, your session 0 sets up for a very successful session 1 through 2000. Scheduling honesty is another big one. I don't know if you've seen that meme out there. The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn, you've got my sword. Legolas, you've got my bow. Gimli, sorry I can't make it Thursday. This is really important to know. You can use an app. My group does that from time to time, or set a regular scheduled date where you'll get together and be honest about it. I know when we first started playing, weekly was what we were able to do. Now that our group has grown and we have families and the like, once every couple weeks is good enough. Lord knows we'd love to play more, but this is what we can do. And so we have to be honest with ourselves and with our schedule. There's nothing worse than having a table where people aren't showing up. We have a 5-person table, 6 if you're including the DM. There are 4 PCs always in play. And we always say, if one person misses, the game is still on. If 2 people miss, the game is canceled. That's our house rule. And you can do it how you want to do it. It's important to be honest with the schedule, not just with yourself, but with the people at the table. 3 big mistakes that people make about session 0. First is missing it. Don't miss session 0. It's so important to get set up. And you can do so before you get to the table, or you can even do it for the first day at the table. Especially if the players don't know one another, it's a great opportunity for them to hash out who's at the table, meet one another, shake hands, and get on the same page. Another thing that you don't want to do is turn session 0 into a lecture. I've said it before, I'll say it again, you're not a novelist, and of course, you're not standing on a podium. You're here to write a story collaboratively with the people at the table. So there's no need for you to stand up and say, hey, these are the rules, this is what's going to happen. It's not necessary. The last mistake that's commonly made at session 0 is avoiding the hard topics. You need to be able to dive into those things that people don't really want to talk about. You want to bring them forth so that they don't come up at the table. Ask your players, what is something that they are sensitive about? What's a topic that they don't want to have at their table? Most of the time, the table will come to an agreement and you'll gloss over certain things. At my table, for instance, if there's sort of an amorous event, we sort of quickly glaze over it, go over some of the top level ideas. Maybe it's as simple as saying, yes, you meet him or her at the bar and you go to your room. The next morning you wake up, the person's there or the person's not. You don't need to get into specifics if you don't want to, and especially if your players don't want to. For me personally, I can tell you, I wouldn't want to get into that. Ending session 0 strong is just as important as starting session 0 strong. There's a couple big things that we want to pay attention to. First and foremost, character alignment. You want to make sure that your player characters are not diametrically opposed on alignment. You don't want someone being, say, lawful good and another character being, say, chaotic evil. That's just cause for conflict. And I don't know who'd want to play a chaotic evil character anyway. I mean, I guess unless the campaign was evil to begin with. But even in that case, it would be kind of hard to predict and control a character. My point is you want to make sure that the alignments at the table align. So if they're neutral good, lawful good, you name it, that's kind of perfect for a campaign. Maybe they're neutral and some of their decisions might be a little bit hairy. Maybe they'll steal, that kind of thing. As long as they generally align, you're not going to run into issues with this. And again, it's really important to make sure that they're aligned up front. If one character says to you, I want to go with an evil character in this campaign, and the campaign's not designed for it, or your homebrew is not designed for it, don't let them. Simple as that. It may not be the campaign for them. And if they want to come and they're insistent upon playing this particular character in the campaign, maybe it's time to replace that person. It's just not worth the upset of the rest of the people at the table. Another thing to check off on is excitement. How excited is everybody at the table? Is everybody really excited for session 1? Are they really looking forward to developing the story together and playing their character? Or do they have hesitations? And if they have hesitations, talk to them about it. Talk to them about some of the concerns that they might have and be there to help facilitate the fun. As I always say, you're there to facilitate the fun and adjudicate situations that really might not be the best. Make sure that the next steps are clear. When you finish session 0, make sure that everybody at the table knows that the next session or the next step is going to be to meet up at the table at such and such a date at whatever regularity, and we're going to start the campaign here. As long as those pieces are met, you're going to be off to a good start. The other thing to make sure of, and I think this should go without saying, is have a way for everybody to communicate. Whether you use WhatsApp or Messenger or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or what have you, have a way for everybody to communicate and ensure that it's a way that everybody is okay with. There's nothing worse than somebody missing a D&D cancellation, showing up and being SOL. As always, a great DM isn't born, they're forged. Stay tuned for our next episode, which is all about the DM tools that you need. And let me be specific, the only DM tools that you need. Drop a comment about what your session 0 looks like. I'd love to hear about it. Until next time, I'll catch you soon.